Top Gun Maverick's carrier launch takes 5 seconds on screen. Real Navy A-18 launches complete in 2.8 seconds at 3.5 Gs. Forces that would snap your neck forward without proper head bracing. Here are 3 physics realities the movie got completely wrong, and why the engineering truth behind carrier operations is far more impressive than Hollywood fiction. You've seen Tom Cruise accelerate down the catapult in what looks like a smooth, controlled launch. The movie shows approximately 5 seconds from catapult engagement to aircraft rotation, giving the impression of manageable acceleration. Real carrier launches subject pilots to forces that would incapacitate untrained individuals. The difference reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the violence involved. Here's the physics reality. The steam catapult system generates 614 pounds per square inch of pressure, driving pistons that accelerate 66,000 pounds of aircraft from 0 to 165 miles per hour in exactly 300 feet. The acceleration force equals 3.5 Gs sustained for the entire 2.8-second launch sequence. Your body weighs 3.5 times normal during those seconds. Think about what this means for you as the pilot. If you weigh 180 pounds, you effectively weigh 630 pounds during launch while managing pre-launch checks, communicating with deck personnel, and preparing for immediate tactical operations. The movie shows crews casually looking around the cockpit during launch. Real pilots brace their heads against the headrest because the acceleration forces would snap your neck forward without that support. The physics equations are unforgiving. To accelerate 66,000 pounds to 165 miles per hour in 300 feet requires force application that exceeds what most mechanical systems can survive. The catapult shuttle alone experiences forces equivalent to launching a school bus straight up against gravity. The movie's leisurely 5-second launch would require only 60% of actual force levels, completely misrepresenting the mechanical violence of real operations. Here's where the engineering gets more impressive. Navy pilots describe the sensation as getting hit in the chest by a linebacker while someone simultaneously pushes your head back into the seat. Your vision narrows slightly as blood pressure shifts. Your breathing requires conscious effort against the chest compression. And you must maintain perfect instrument scan throughout, because tactical operations begin the instant you leave the deck. The movie version makes it look manageable. The reality would overwhelm most people. Watch what happens when we examine the second physics failure. The climactic canyon run shows Maverick's A-18 performing sustained high G maneuvers at low altitude. The film depicts what appears to be 8 to 9 G turns while maintaining stable flight and casual conversation. Real A-18 pilots would be unconscious or dead attempting those maneuvers at that altitude. High G maneuvering causes blood to drain from your brain toward your feet. At 5 Gs, you weigh 5 times normal, and blood flow to your brain decreases dramatically. Fighter pilots wear G-suits that inflate around legs and abdomen, squeezing blood back toward the upper body. They also perform the anti-G straining maneuver, tensing leg and abdominal muscles while grunting to maintain blood pressure in the brain. Even with G-suits and proper technique, sustained 9G maneuvering causes progressive vision loss. First, you lose peripheral vision. Tunnel vision sets in as your visual field narrows to a small circle directly ahead. Continue pulling Gs and you experience gray out, where vision dims significantly. Push further and complete blackout occurs. You're conscious but completely blind. Maintain those forces and G-induced loss of consciousness happens within seconds. The movie shows crews pulling sustained high G turns while maintaining perfect vision and coherent communication. Real pilots at those G levels are grunting through the anti-G straining maneuver, experiencing significant vision degradation and focusing entirely on not losing consciousness. Casual conversation becomes physically impossible when you're fighting to keep blood in your brain. But here's the capability that makes the movie sequence physically impossible: the altitude factor. At low altitude, you have zero room for error. If you black out at 35,000 feet, you have time to recover before impacting terrain. Black out at 500 feet during a high G turn, and you have approximately 1.2 seconds before catastrophic ground impact. Real fighter pilots would never attempt 9G maneuvering at the altitudes shown in the film because the risk-to-benefit ratio makes it suicidal rather than tactical. The physics gets brutal when you understand what your body experiences. At 9Gs, your 180-pound body weighs 1,620 pounds. Your heart struggles to pump blood upward against 9 times normal gravity. Your G-suit squeezes your legs with enough pressure to restrict circulation. You're performing the strain maneuver, essentially doing an abdominal crunch while tensing every leg muscle and grunting forcefully to trap blood in your upper body. Now combine that physical reality with the mental workload. You're navigating terrain at 500 feet and 500 miles per hour. You're tracking threats and managing weapon systems. You're communicating with your wingman. And you're doing all of this while your vision tunnels, your breathing becomes labored, and your body weighs nearly a ton. The movie makes it look like an exciting roller coaster ride. The reality involves human performance at the absolute edge of physiological capability. The third physics problem appears during the carrier landing sequences, where the movie significantly underrepresents the violence of arrested landings. When an A-18 catches the arresting wire at 145 miles per hour, the aircraft decelerates from flying speed to complete stop in exactly 320 feet. That represents negative 3.5 Gs of deceleration sustained for 2.4 seconds. The arresting wire system must absorb kinetic energy equivalent to a fully loaded semi-truck hitting a wall at highway speed. The wire itself stretches to nearly twice its resting length during the arrest, creating elastic tension that could cut a human in half. The entire system must dissipate this energy without breaking the wire, damaging the aircraft, or injuring you as the pilot. The movie shows relatively smooth deceleration during landing sequences. Real arrested landings feel like controlled car crashes. Pilots describe it as hitting a wall at 150 miles per hour that somehow doesn't destroy you. Your body strains against 5-point harness straps that dig into shoulders and thighs. Your helmet snaps forward despite neck muscle tension. Any loose objects in the cockpit become projectiles. What the movie completely omits is the immediate violence of the wire catch. The instant your tailhook engages the arresting wire, deceleration begins with such force that you must have already assumed the brace position. Head pressed back against headrest, arm muscles tensed to prevent the control stick from being ripped from your hand, legs braced against rudder pedals to maintain position. Here's where the operational reality becomes clear. Landing at night multiplies the difficulty exponentially. The movie briefly shows night operations but completely fails to capture the psychological challenge involved. You're approaching a moving postage stamp in complete darkness while being violently thrown around by air turbulence from the carrier's superstructure. The only visual reference is the Fresnel lens optical landing system, a series of lights that provide glide slope information. Experienced carrier pilots describe night landings as controlled hallucinations. Your brain lacks visual reference points for spatial orientation. The carrier deck appears to move randomly as your aircraft pitches and rolls in turbulent air. You're flying entirely on instruments while simultaneously trying to maintain visual contact with the landing area. The cognitive workload exceeds almost any other aviation task. The physics errors in Top Gun Maverick reveal something important about how Hollywood approaches military aviation. The movie prioritizes visual spectacle over technical accuracy because accurate physics doesn't photograph as dramatically. Sustained high-G maneuvering looks better on camera than the reality of pilots grunting through anti-G strain and fighting tunnel vision. But here's what makes this fascinating from an engineering perspective. The real physics of carrier operations is actually more impressive than the movie version. The fact that Navy engineers solved the problem of launching 66,000-pound aircraft from 300-foot decks using controlled mechanical violence represents achievement that exceeds Hollywood imagination. Consider what the Catapult system actually accomplishes. It must calculate precise force application for different aircraft types, varying fuel loads, changing wind conditions, and dozens of other variables. Every launch represents a physics problem solved in real time with zero tolerance for error. Too little force and the aircraft drops into the ocean ahead of the ship. Excessive force causes structural damage or pilot incapacitation. The arresting gear system demonstrates equally impressive engineering. It must catch aircraft landing at different speeds, varying weights, and unpredictable conditions while absorbing massive kinetic energy without failure. The system includes hydraulic dampers that precisely control wire payout, preventing both broken wires and excessive deceleration forces. Modern electromagnetic aircraft launch systems represent the next evolution. Instead of steam pressure, EMALS uses linear induction motors to accelerate aircraft with infinitely variable force control. This precision allows gentler early acceleration followed by peak forces at optimal points, reducing stress on both airframe and pilot. The technical advantage becomes clear when you understand the human factors involved. Pilots must function normally while experiencing forces that would incapacitate untrained individuals. The training process conditions bodies and minds to handle extreme acceleration, deceleration, and G-forces while maintaining perfect operational effectiveness. What separates carrier-qualified pilots from other aviators isn't just flying skill. It's the ability to perform complex cognitive tasks under physical conditions that shut down normal human function. During Catapult launch at 3.5 Gs, you're simultaneously managing engine parameters, monitoring flight instruments, communicating with ship personnel, and preparing for immediate tactical operations. During arrested landing, you're processing visual information from the Fresnel lens, feeling aircraft response through control inputs, listening to landing signal officer calls, and preparing for the instant decision of whether to execute a bolter. Full power application if the tailhook misses all wires. All of this happens in darkness, in turbulent air, approaching a moving deck, while experiencing physical forces that would overwhelm most people. The psychological adaptation required rivals the physical challenge. Your brain must accept that getting violently thrown forward during arrested landing is normal and safe. You must trust engineering systems that subject your body to forces it evolved to interpret as life-threatening. The cognitive override of natural survival instincts requires training that most people never experience. Top Gun Maverick succeeded as entertainment precisely because it simplified complex physics into visual sequences that audiences could process. The movie created emotional engagement through character drama and spectacular photography. But in doing so, it significantly underrepresented the actual achievement represented by carrier aviation. Real carrier operations demonstrate engineering principles pushed to absolute limits. The Catapult systems, arresting gear, aircraft structural design, and human factors all represent solutions to problems that seem mathematically impossible. The fact that these operations happen routinely aboard carriers operating worldwide reveals capabilities that exceed Hollywood imagination. Understanding the actual physics doesn't diminish enjoyment of the movie. It enhances appreciation for what Navy engineers and aviators actually accomplish. The film showed a dramatized version of operations that make American naval aviation the most capable power projection force in human history. The reality involves forces, precision, and human performance that make the movie version look tame by comparison. The next time you watch Top Gun Maverick, you'll recognize where Hollywood physics diverges from engineering reality. Those carrier launch sequences that look dramatic on screen happen 40% faster in reality with forces that would make Tom Cruise pass out without proper training and equipment. Those high G canyon maneuvers would have real pilots fighting unconsciousness rather than having casual conversations. The engineering reality behind carrier aviation represents some of the most impressive mechanical achievement in modern military technology. Steam catapults applying 614 psi through precisely controlled pistons, arresting gear absorbing kinetic energy equivalent to semi-truck crashes, electromagnetic launch systems providing infinitely variable force application, aircraft structures designed to survive forces that would destroy civilian machines. Tom Cruise accelerated down that catapult in 5 seconds of Hollywood time. Real Navy pilots do it in 2.8 seconds of physics reality. The difference between entertainment and engineering reveals why carrier aviation remains the most demanding flying environment ever created.